So this is going to be one of, God, it might be 100 videos that we do on the moon landing. But one thing specifically, Jay, that we want to talk about today is the lunar vehicle, not the module, but that's in relation to some of the stuff we're going to talk about, but the actual buggy.
Yeah, the buggy, the rover.
The rover, yes.
Yeah, the rover and the modules, but the rover in particular.
Yeah, we want to talk about the rover. You want to go through the process, and we actually have an article from Popular Science.
Popular Liars, Science.
Made famous by their 9/11 articles.
Yeah, those guys.
They go through a really detailed article here debunking conspiracy theorists, talking about the lunar rover, designing and unpacking a car on the moon. And once again, just like some of the 9/11 stuff, they sort of raise more questions than answer the questions they're trying to snuff out the fires about.
Right.
No pun intended.
No, of course not. Or the snuff. Snuff out, right?
I got what you're saying.
Yeah, but no, it's very interesting because what we found in here was a document from 1970, I believe, from NASA with a lunar roving vehicle operations handbook. And they have this nice little 6-step diagram, A through F, just like putting together a quick little play set for the kids that you bought at Walmart.
This is more detailed than what IKEA tells you to do.
True that. You're right. But this actually tells you in 6 easy steps how to set up your your rover, how to unpack it from the lunar module and have a ready-to-go buggy in 6 easy steps. And one thing you'll notice is that as the astronauts, it takes 2 of them to pull the cables down, as they pull it down and it pops open, as it hits the surface of the moon, the wheels are already on, according to this diagram from NASA. But when we look at the picture of the buggy, what do we see?
Well, let's back up 1 second. I have a question about this 463-pound vehicle. And there was that Rocketdyne scientist that talked about Neil Armstrong test flying the LEM, the lunar landing module. And he said, if you just move your butt like a quarter of an inch, you're going to, and he actually ejected in one of the test flights of that. So putting, you put however many astronauts there are anywhere from 150 to 185 pounds, let's say, at the time. And then you put a vehicle that weighs almost 500 pounds in there. Now I saw pictures of it. I couldn't see where you would even store a vehicle that size, folded up or not.
No,
that's the first question before we even get to the rover being. I keep wanting to say module too.
I know.
Before getting the rover onto the surface, getting it up there and having, the thrust and having the power to do something like that.
Yeah, and I read somewhere where they actually, speaking of the thrust and the power and the trajectory, if you will, and how sensitive it was. I read somewhere that on one of the Apollo missions, they left the rover on the moon. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so on the way back in the module, you're 500 pounds lighter.
Correct.
So that wouldn't affect your trajectory at some point? I don't know. I think it would, right? Because you're coming down with the rover and the 2 astronauts. You're going up without the rover.
Well, that's why it just miraculously went up without any thrust.
Cool, right? That's why they didn't need the thrust, because they lost the buggy.
Yeah, there was no crater or anything. So
gotcha. But yeah, of course, naturally. But you pointed this out to me earlier, and I know other moon hoax theorists have as well. But when you look at several of these pictures of the buggy, we notice something about the tires and the moon dust.
Well, there's 2 things. The number one thing which people know about is that there's no tracks. And what you described, which is how they unfolded and unpack the rover, there should be some tire tracks. Now, in relation to that, point number 2 or exhibit 2 of this is that none of these pictures are anywhere near the landing module.
Yes.
So you're not seeing any tracks, and you're not seeing the module where it was unpacked and rolled out onto there. So there should be, at least in most of these pictures, one which the Earth, my God, it looks photoshopped as hell. But
yeah. Well, in looking at this, if you ask the guys at Popular Science or whomever, hey, where are the tracks? Their answer could be, well, it was set up right there and it hadn't rolled yet, right?
Correct.
But if that were the case, we can tell by this NASA diagram on how to get your little buggy out of the the lunar module, then the module would be right there. I mean, it would be right there next to it, because the only time you wouldn't have those tracks is right when you pulled it out. So if that's the case, what'd they do? Move the module out of the way for the picture? No. Well, they would have rolled it. Well, okay, then where are the tracks?
And it wasn't a separate container. Well, of course, then you're saying, how the hell did you rocket up a container and then land it? And the container should be in the shot as well.
Right, right. So I guess the overall point we're getting at here is, in this picture of this rover, there should be either tracks present in the dust or the lunar module right next to it as it was unpacked. Not neither.
Well, you did make a point too. This is almost 500 pounds, 463, I think, 463 pounds. So that cannot make tracks, but a certain other thing up on the moon that had tracks did make very heavy tracks in the surface.
Yeah, the astronauts.
Yeah.
I mean, the astronauts themselves. You can look at this picture right here and see all of those footprints around it. So let's just say the answer to the where are the tracks from the buggy question someone says is, oh, well, it blew off. It blew away. They don't stay. Oh, okay. Well, then the tracks from the astronauts stay, but not the tracks from the buggy, which is heavier?
And they were deep.
Right.
Deep boot tracks.
Right. Yeah. So that doesn't make sense.
Let's make this point too. The astronauts were in the rover.
Oh, yeah.
So you have even more weight in the
That's
rover.
right. So if one guy drives the buggy, you're talking about 600 to 700 pounds, in this buggy right here. So my question is where are the tracks? And if there's no tracks present, where is the lunar module? Show me one of those two, and I'll believe that this buggy is on the moon.